All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Simply Finance with Shane White. I'm stoked today to have Matt Lombardi from Beam on the show. Matt, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here
I,
finally.
I know, I appreciate it. We've
Been
been talking
watching.
about this for a while, so I'm
I
pumped we
know.
finally got
I'm
it, got
honored.
this on.
That
Appreciate
wasn't
it.
sorry. That wasn't a passive aggressive. I'm excited to be here finally. That was a genuine enthusiasm.
Oh, that could have been taken that way. I didn't even think of it like
Yeah.
that. I thought it was more of like I never could get it on the schedule type of thing. That works too. No, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to have you on here. For people listening who don't know who you are, would you mind giving everyone a little bit of a background to you and definitely to Beam?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, just one of the co-founders of Beam. I started that with Kevin Moran, one of my best friends, and obviously now co-founder. But um, I guess the quick highlights or cliff notes is I grew up in the Boston area. I played hockey my whole life. One of my biggest childhood dreams was to play hockey at Boston College, and I was lucky to realize that and to have 4 great years there and be a part of some great teams, winning national championships, and then moved on to play a few years professionally in the minors. Hockey stopped a little sooner than I was hoping. I had a really bad concussion my second year playing, and from there, I just kind of took sort of a little bit of a zigzagging path with a few different entrepreneurial endeavors, and some not working out. And then eventually, learning and hearing a bunch about CBD, becoming really interested in it, reconnecting with Kevin. He also went to Boston College and played baseball there and had a similar background. And about 3 years ago, we launched this thing called Beam. I can obviously dive more into that, but kind of our story with it is just former athletes turned entrepreneurs, and just doing stuff that we're passionate about. All things health and wellness are just something that we love, and found a way to merge business and passions.
Love it. Yeah, and I didn't know until I started doing my research. I didn't realize you'd started. Was it two other companies before Beam too?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, but when I stopped playing hockey, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think like a lot of athletes experience. I saw a lot of my friends either got into finance or commercial real estate at the time, and I wound up in finance, and wasn't really seeing anything that was. I enjoyed what I was learning, but I didn't see anything that was overly exciting in terms of just looking further down the road. And at the same time, I'd started to help coach at a high school team in Brookline, and a lot of these young guys asking me to work on skills and stuff after practice, and then when the season ended, if I could train them and work out with them. And I thought it was. I think I've had entrepreneurial DNA in my DNA, and I thought there was a really cool thing as I'm seeing. I'm in the locker room. These kids are constantly on their phones on Snapchat was just becoming super popular, and obviously Instagram and things like that. But I saw I wanted to do something. Oh, maybe I can use their phones to be more impactful or do something more productive than just social media. And so anyway, so I started training these kids, and it was really kind of like using Google Docs to kind of mentor them more so than just like create their workouts and stuff. And I just feel like I shouldn't say snap my fingers, but it felt like very quickly, all of a sudden there was like 100 kids in this
Oh
program
wow.
that I had started. And I wound up, just all these kids are cycling out. I was living at my parents' house. They're coming down to the basement, working out, tracking their workouts. And I wound up, connecting with these two older gentlemen that were running the software company. And one of their kids had joined the program. And long story short, we ended up kind of taking this thing that was, essentially tracking. For me as a coach, I could track all these things that I wanted to with these young hockey players, taking that and giving it to like BC Hockey and saying, run all of your communications, your data, your tracking, whatever you want to do into this essentially operating system. And this is sort of like pre-Slack,
Oh
days
yeah.
too. It's like 2014-ish probably. And just for context, and it was really cool. We started, we gave it to Harvard Hockey, then the Celtics were using the Bruins, the Flyers were, teams at Notre Dame. So we were, building a sales team of, Olympic rowers and lacrosse players and
Oh
hockey
wow.
players selling into their sports. And
Oh, so this wasn't just like a little tiny side thing. This actually turned into a pretty big business.
it was pretty cool. And probably like 3 years or so into, we raised a little bit of money, not a ton. It wasn't probably as big as maybe it sounds just because we worked with some elite teams, but we did have a team of salespeople and like we're raising some money. And it was really needed at the time too, just kind of where like applications and operating systems and things like that were with teams. Like everybody was so antiquated at the time. You're just using pen and paper and taping stuff to the whiteboard.
Sure.
So then it was kind of a needed tool, and now I think everybody's pretty well covered now from a technical standpoint. But long story, I just ended up not really being eye to eye with my two co-founders at the time, and just decided it was best to probably move on from it. And I learned a lot just around partnerships, communication, and just, early stage stuff. And then had uh, looking back, maybe not such a great idea to start a business with my fiance at the time. She was also an athlete. She was a gymnast, and we just had, again, a shared passion to inspire young athletes. And we essentially, launched an app that focused in gymnastics, and it gave a young aspiring gymnast access to Olympians, coaches. We made, documentary series with UCLA gymnastics. So like everything,
Oh, wow.
and then they could engage and share their practices and progress. And it was pretty cool. We built a pretty big community out of that. And it was just like one of those things, like the relationship wasn't going well. That in turn made the business struggle. And both of those kind of just came to an end. And again, a ton of lessons, just again, launching something early, raising a little bit of money, trying and failing and learning.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of sequenced into being with Kevin. He was at a point in his life where he was doing really well at his job, but didn't love it. And I was kind of just getting out of this thing and was, essentially starting over again. And we had just become so passionate about this space and the opportunity that we saw with Beam, which really was centered around CBD to start. And we, earlier in 2018 had just been reading and learning a lot about CBD, the benefits, what it is, what it's not. I mean, talk about a space that is very high skepticism, very low trust from a consumer standpoint. And at the time, there really just weren't anybody pulling away as really like an emerging brand or leader or thought leader, or in the space that we knew well, which was athletics and active lifestyles. No one really was doing anything that really resonated with that audience. And our approach really hasn't been like, we don't really consider ourselves a CBD company. We definitely have CBD roots in how we launch, but for us, I think we've done a really good job focusing more on like the customer needs and the benefits that we want to provide, and then using CBD as an ingredient versus everything is just CBD. And there's patches, when you look at a CBD website, the general product offering is, I would say, a little obscure to a general wellness consumer. There's patches, there's tinctures, there's vapes, there's dog treats, there's bath bombs, gummies, edibles. It's kind of a weird product set.
Yeah.
And we just kind of looked at just like, I don't consume any other supplement in those form factors or like that. And then you look at the time, especially then 3 years ago, like the packaging and everything just looked really like it might get you high. And THC, CBD, what are all these things? Yeah. So we really just like merging a great brand, high quality products, focusing on functional, stacking unique ingredients together to promote better sleep, better focus, recovery, help with stress, things like that. That's kind of been our focus and our way where we sort of have emerged in that category is like thinking and approaching it a bit differently than just sort of the norm. I know that's probably went off topic a little bit, but
no, that was great. No, it's very interesting because, I do tend to see a lot of entrepreneurs on here. It seems like, to your point, they have like a bug, like whether and funny enough, a lot of people probably, see you or know you as the guy that started Beam, but most people, like the one that people start to know you from isn't necessarily your first endeavor. And most of the time it's not, right? It's like usually have a few failures and you just didn't stop. It's interesting. It sounds like you never really went into the big corporate world at all. You were like, no, I'm just going to keep trying stuff.
Yeah. I think I just, I think through hockey, I just learned I was just lucky with my parents. Like they always just supported me to dream big and go. It was never, I would just think back, like, I think I didn't realize it at the time, but like when I was in high school and college, I built out this awesome hockey basement. So if you're a hockey player, like this was just right heaven, but it was this grungy basement. Half of it was where you could shoot pucks. It didn't matter if I broke windows or holes in the wall. It was
wow.
It was all tile floor. So it was almost like synthetic ice and you could just stick handle and shoot and all that stuff. And then the other side was all the gym equipment that I've accumulated over the years. And I think the best thing was like, I was like able to have that basement, but I was never like dragged down there. Hey, go do these things. It was more just like, here's what you need if you want to practice and get better. I'm not going to force you. And so I just learned, just like go down there on my own, just practice. And it helped me develop just like a love for the process and a love for getting better. Versus where, having my parents, drag me down there and like making me shoot 100 pucks before dinner. It's like, I would do that, but I would do that on my own and I'd learn the discipline to do that. And I think that's, as I got done with hockey, I think a lot of athletes sometimes can struggle with finding something that they can be as or more passionate about just because you grow up doing the sport. And if you reach, an elite level of it, it's hard to mimic that same passion. I think I always just said, I'm just going to keep chasing stuff that I think I'm passionate about. And yeah, I don't know that I've ever had like a real job before,
You
quote
didn't
unquote,
sound like
but
it.
no,
No, which is cool. I mean,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. I guess I did for like 7 months, um, but yeah, I guess I just, how I've approached it, I'll just kind of figure it out. Like things failed and didn't work. And it's like, all right, I'll just kind of keep going and I'll just eventually figure it out.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like too, you've always been obsessed with the process and being, going after things that you're passionate about. Was there any like did you it sounds like you were never someone that was worried about money. Like it wasn't like, a lot of people go straight to like how much am I making, health insurance, all this other stuff. It sounds like that was never on your radar.
Yeah. Not really. I just like, again, I think I would just always figure it out. I think, we've, make a ton of money playing, minor league hockey. And I think I've learned just like, I'm pretty simple in my lifestyle and things that I like. I like nice things. But I think I've learned just to be pretty minimalist. And again, like I've always looked at it. We even looked at it with being like, it's a startup or raising venture capital dollars. So obviously there's the expectation that we have some type of liquidity event
Yeah.
throughout this process. Right. And I learned this in hockey. I think, when I was at BC, if we didn't win a national championship every year, like, it was really just like, it was almost considered a failure. Like
Yeah.
it's an elite program. Like I was fortunate. I played in 3 national championship games in my 4 years. We won 2 of them, lost in
Wow.
one. My junior year, we didn't make playoffs. So that was just like this obscure year. But I learned through that, like you can draw the kind of connect the dots on between the teams that won, the ones that didn't. Those years we just had a really keen focus on the process, like focus on the process and the results will come in. I think I've looked at that either from a financial standpoint or even just with being like, let's just focus on the process and then trust that the results will come, whether that be financial or other things. Particularly, I think I've seen it and I've talked to other entrepreneurs and founders, like when they're so focused on the exit and they're just trying to, engineer it or get there faster or create it, you don't make the best decisions that you should be. So if you focus on if you just focus on doing the right thing today to get better, obviously keeping in mind I'm pointing towards this larger goal, and you just focus on the day to day of that, just laying one brick at a time. I found that the results will get there, and you just have to have an optimism about that. I think money's important, but I think I've decided to trust like that part will figure itself out, and I'll just do things that I care about.
No, I love that. It's like the compound effect, just, something you do every day. You don't stop, right? It just keeps building on
Yeah.
itself and gets better and better. I love that. Is, was the like connection with Kevin and getting Beam off the ground, was that something you kind of worked on just all in right away? Or was that something you were still working on the other venture and kind of like phasing out of that part of your life and into Beam?
He's in software sales. So when I guess you could say launch Beam, we even have a website. We went and set up a table at a core power yoga studio and we're selling it by hand, had no idea what we're doing, just a good old fashioned scrappy
Yeah.
startup.
And what were you selling? What was like the first product did you
It
start
was a
with?
tincture. Like the
Yeah.
thing that I said we thought was so weird was our first
Okay.
product. We still have it today. It's called The One. It's just a CBD oil. We just wanted to get feedback. Like I'm sure, you've heard the term, like the MVP, like our most minimal viable product. Like we had all these ideas for these functional SKUs and sleep products and kind of everything you see today, but we don't have the money, nor do we know if people really like that. So why don't we just get to market, test the market, get some feedback and go from there. But yeah, in a way, like we definitely both went all in. Kevin, just knowing like his day job that he had at the time, like he just had to get through, I think it was like February or something, just like close a few deals and kind of just whatever it was that he had to finish out. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would really count that. Like I would just say, yeah, we both really just went all in on it. And just it's kind of funny. People ask, oh, did you have a background in manufacturing or supplements, or like, did you study this in school? And just no to all of those questions. I think it's a gift and a curse. Like we just have obsessive personality. So we became really intrigued by this. We became really enthusiastic about the opportunity and just became obsessed with it, and just like learned all of these things and just went a million miles an hour into it. And I think that approach can not serve you well at times, but more so than not, I think it does. And I think when I look at, where we've been able to get to in 3 years, and hopefully where we get to in our next year and the year after that. I think that it really, like, the way I would summarize it, maybe whether it was just the two of us and now when we have a team of over 20 people, I think it's just like a constant focus on the process and like pushing the business forward and just like doing those things that need to get done every single day and just drive the business. It's exhausting and it's really hard. But I think that's been sort of like our recipe to get from 0 to 1 and just hopefully beyond.
No, definitely. From the time I've gotten to know you guys, you definitely seem like that. You guys are quick movers, which, I love, I can resonate with. And at the beginning, like, I think one thing that most people that I've had reach out to me from the show, I think most people who want to start anything get stuck, is to your point, the very beginning. Like when you guys realize like, okay, we want to launch a CBD brand. And I know you guys had like a whole plan of products and probably even like, what we'll get into, but which is like, you guys really found a way to partner with athletes, which I think is a really unique differentiator. How did you guys, like, what was like step one of even like figuring out where to source CBD from? Like, I think most people would be like, well, how the hell do I even do that?
I think Kevin always said it, just like a lot of bad phone calls, just Google stuff. And then you just start calling people. We don't even know what we were talking about at the time. You just start asking a bunch of questions and one call leads to another. You just create a list of people. And I would say, like, generally with consumer stuff, whether it be wellness or even other things, the world has changed. It's really, I would say, flattened. It's really easy to find co-manufacturers for anything that you want to make, whether it be hats, supplements, wallets, notebooks, whatever, water bottles. It's pretty commoditized in a way. I think there's I think that whole industry, like, I think 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't that simple just to go make your own products. And I think that's why you just used to just see like just big brands always all the time. And now I think every category has almost been reimagined, with a new emerging brand. Like go into CVS or in a Whole Foods, like there's just so many exciting brands now that are in every category, whether, chips, crackers, protein bars, RX bar is an example. So we didn't know that though at the time, but I think what we were kind of surprised was just like when you start Googling stuff and you just start calling these people, there's a lot of opportunities to find people to make products with you. And then, we had, I think one of those things that served us well also would just be like, we have a very strong bias towards taking action on stuff. You mentioned we move quickly, and I think that's probably one of the most important things that we've seen. Even sometimes like we struggle with some, on our team and things like that, is like, you have to move quick, like accept, like, fail fast, move on to the next thing. And for us, I always love this story. It's so simple. Even when we were launching, and this is like, needing domains and emails and bank accounts and like really early on.
It's
just
annoying admin stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, we want to launch this. What are the things that we need to do? Our goal is to launch it by this day. Like, what needs to be done in order to actually go sell our first product? And it was, I don't know, I have a picture of the whiteboard we drew up in his apartment. It has like those 10 or 15 things that are just the most simplistic things that you need to do, and just go do those things. And you don't even need to overly think about it. And I've always found that approach, no matter what you're doing, to be really valuable, which is like, I have this goal or I have an objective. I want to do this. Just give me 5 things that'll, right now, I think are logical to get me closer to that. And, one of the 5 might work, none might work, but at least you start taking action. You learned what's not working, come up with a new list. And we always find too, when we launch new products and we have a goal and we launch a new brand thing, when we're just launching the business, it's take action, just get moving. And then I always find that the important thing is to look at the results and feedback you're getting, and then either ditch it, lean into it, keep doing it, do more of it, change it. And then keep doing more, just taking more action on stuff. It's when people, kind of get stuck in ways, it's really simple. Just, you got to go take action. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, I know at RX, we used to say something really similar. It was, I forget exactly how we framed it. It was basically like, by the time a big company makes like 1 or 2 decisions, our goal is to make 5. And even if we get 3 of those right, we've made, probably 1 or 2 more good decisions than someone who's moving slow. And that was kind of our philosophy, which sounds, and then obviously like grading it and figuring out why we did wrong and all this good stuff. But no, totally get that. You got to move fast. That's really interesting, because I feel like you guys also popped up at a time, and it's funny. I actually thought of this today. Funny story. The first time I ever saw you guys, I knew Jordan from Super Coffee pretty early on in their days. And I remember they were still in New York, and he posted something about you had a bar, That was like one of the
Yeah.
first, and I remember because I was at RX still, and
Yep.
I was like, oh, they have like an actual like protein bar, and that, I remember that was the first time I ever like interacted with the brand. I think they were at
Yeah.
some event in New York City with you guys. It's cool because that's a good example, right? Of like you guys tried a lot of stuff and it didn't all work, and
Yeah.
you don't still sell the bars, but you got into it.
Exactly. Yeah. For context, so those bars you just mentioned, they're long gone, but that was one of those things where it's like you had at the time we launched being like everybody was just, selling tinctures and the same topicals and all the crap. And we just said like, what's something innovative and different we can do, especially in this area of being in athletics and active lifestyle. And we found a really easy, like really good co-manufacturer to make bars with us. And they were great. They were unprocessed, they were organic, gluten-free, vegan, they had CBD in them. They're really cool. And it served the need of like when we're going to the games or different events is to be handing out bars, not bottles of oil.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just like, so we had that goal, like we got to innovate and do something different to get out there. That was our solution to it. And just over time, and then we started launching, Dream Powder and these other functional SKUs. And we just saw like the bars just don't make any sense anymore economically. Like people love them, but like it's not like, let's focus on these other things that are creating better results. And we killed it. And that, I think one thing we're proud of is like that conversation probably lasted maybe 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. We've been selling these bars now for almost a year. And then it was just like that. We decided we're going to kill it, move on. Like we'll finish the current inventory and like, that's it. No more POs into creating bars. We're going to go lean into these new innovative SKUs and like make our bet on those.
Oh, I love that. So even though people loved it, you guys internally realized it wasn't going to help you guys get to this, massive Mount Everest peak as a company. You just killed it.
Yeah.
Love it. And is that kind of the similar, like, I know you mentioned tinctures. I know you guys have a cream, obviously you have a lot of different products, which I'll share the link to everything. So you guys can check it out. But I mean, now it's funny as you fast forward, like that's how I first saw you guys was the bar. But your Dream Powder now has become like, I would guess is like your hero product, which at RX, like I would always compare that's like the chocolate sea salt flavor that still today does like 40% of our business. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like, was that the same thing? Was that like a test and learn type of thing? You guys launched it and it was, again, that was like a big win.
When we launched Dream, Dream wasn't Dream like as it is today. Like when we launched it, we kind of just hit an inflection point. And it kind of got, I feel like, in the hands of enough people and people really started, it's efficacious, it's really yummy. Yeah, that wasn't like a home run when we first launched it. It always did well. And we had sort of like a small core group of products and they all were sort of selling, I would say, equally. And then the more we leaned into innovation, that was our goal. We always looked at it, we tracked it. We sort of had like our traditional CBD SKUs and then our innovative SKUs. And early on, obviously, like the traditional was making up, 80% of the pie. And then we just saw like every quarter, like everything started skewing towards innovation. And now all of our innovative SKUs just, are the core of what we do. And from Dream to the focus capsules, hydration, all that stuff. So it's, yeah, I guess that's kind of another topic, but it's one of those things too. It's like, you could just say like looking at Beam from 10,000 foot view today is maybe a customer, just like, a friend of ours that just looks at what we're doing. It might look fun and exciting and big and all these things, but it's like that's not what Beam was when we launched. Like we didn't just snap our fingers, launch Beam, and all of a sudden have the Matt Frazier and Baker Mayfield and Venus Williams and Danica and Peter and all these great entrepreneurs and the team that we have like involved in day one. Like nobody wanted to work at Beam when we launched. We had to really convince people before we had funding and everything to jump on this crazy wild thing that was probably more likely to fail than succeed at the time. And yeah, it's like, I think that's like anything though. Like you just see things, you see the results of things. You don't really get to see the behind the scenes or what's going on underneath it all. But yeah, I guess that's probably a different topic.
No, yeah. No, that's really cool though. It's a cool leeway into what I kind of want to chat about next, which is just, you guys are definitely innovative with your products 100%. That's pretty obvious to anyone I think that follows the brand. But what's interesting to me too is I remember when you guys first came onto the CBD scene, that was when I feel like everyone was starting to talk about CBD and like how everyone thought it was going to blow up in the next few years, but it seemed like all the brands were just like, I always called it like gas station brands. Like it's like shit you'd see on a shelf at like, a 7-Eleven. You're like, I'm not going to buy that. What is that? Did you guys from the beginning, like, did you think of it differently? Like we need to really come at this from a brand perspective. And then like the athlete angle, was that always just kind of like how you guys envisioned bringing Beam to life?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like exactly what we're doing today is we drew this up 3 years ago. That would be a lie. But there's definitely a couple core things that we um, definitely had a lot of conviction around that are very present in today's version of Beam. Which one, we really knew like people do judge a book by its cover. We're in this like incredibly high skepticism, low trust space. Like people are going to look at the brand and like just like you said, you go in a gas station, you see like the packaging that's honestly, it could be like the most high quality CBD in the world in there, but because the label sucks or it looks very off putting, you don't even consider you looking at or buying it. And we just knew if we want to win in the space, like you kind of have to win the hearts of the consumers. Like you have to build trust with them. Like we're in such a crazy nascent, complicated space that like we really need to build trust with people. And a lot of that is just like a look and feel, like what's the first impression they get when they see it. And so we always took the brand super, super serious in the beginning and probably over invested in that. I would say in a scrappy way. Like we didn't go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at brand agency to create the Beam brand. But I would say like with the small amount of capital we used just to start the business, like a lot of that really went towards building the brand and crafting the right brand. And then on the other side of it too, is just like we understood like people trust products or things that they see people they admire using. And so that in the context of like the athletes and, our partnerships and things that we're able to establish over the years, both early and on and now, that was one huge aspect of us creating credibility. We went similar to RX product. We went super deep into CrossFit early on.
Yeah.
And when you see Matt Frazier and Brooke Wells and Tia and Katrin and all these, I don't mean to leave anybody out, but all these amazing athletes, we're fortunate to work with a ton of them. That builds a ton of credibility. Like, okay, Matt's using this, Matt Frazier, like if he's using it, like he's the fittest person in the world. Like he's not messing around. He wouldn't put shit in his body. I trust that this is a good quality product. And we're able, those first like getting Matt, like I think we're fortunate. It was our background as athletes, and to be able to look him and his agent, Matt O'Keefe, and I, be like, look, like we're athletes. We get what Matt's going through. We've been there. We compete at high levels. Like we know how serious it is, when you, especially in the supplement space and drug testing, everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that was really just like for them too, like that was a little bit of a leap of faith. Obviously Matt could have gone out and worked with, really any supplement brand or CBD brand he wanted to at the time. And, it was a leap of faith, but again, like that came from our background as athletes. I think if we didn't have that, they probably was like, no thanks. You're just like every other company that's reached out to us. There's nothing unique about you. I think early on when we had nothing, or what was unique was our background as athletes and leaning into that story, which I don't think we did a very good job with at the time too. And then again, like it was people judge your book, really understanding the brand, building the highest quality products that we could, so the best athletes in the world trust them, and then figure out like how do we then package this up and communicate it to the general wellness consumer. And for us, that was really understanding like what are the needs and functions and benefits, the pain points that they have. So those are kind of the three main pillars that we knew we needed to lean into from the beginning. Hopefully, that was maybe a ramble, but hopefully
No,
it makes sense.
that was great. I mean, it's really interesting too, because I hadn't really thought about it from that angle. Like, yeah, if Matt tested positive for something in a product and he thought it came from Beam, like, yeah, that'd be a disaster, right? So I guess it was probably a leap of faith, kind of on not both sides, but like, I guess that is it was probably a big risk early on, was just making sure it's as clean as humanly possible, right?
Totally. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. I mean, was that your first one? Was Matt kind of like the first big one that you guys brought on? You guys have brought on a ton. It's crazy too, because you guys are, backed by some now too, right? Like Danica Patrick and some of these folks that just, in their respective spaces are big voices.
Yeah. I want to say, I have to give credit, like Chris Gioramo, Amanda Barnhart, Danny Spiegel. I want to say those are our first three CrossFit athletes. And like, even just getting them on board too, like that also helped build a little bit of credibility when we had the conversation with Matt O'Keefe at the time. But like, I'll never forget that too. Like those are just like, kind of was asking you about like how you got to, how you interviewed Matt on your podcast. Yeah. It's like, that was like DMs and just messaging people. And like, I'll never, like whatever happens to be, like, I'll always like appreciate those three athletes in particular. Just like, okay, you replied to like a random message from these two guys starting a new company. You took a leap of faith with us, and like we were able to use that to then build more athletes in the community and then get to where we're. So like, I'll always appreciate Danny, Christy, and Amanda for that, big time.
No, I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool too, because like I think what's resonated with a lot of people that I know that are into Beam is you've also created products that just like can be used in a daily fashion, right? Like I know me myself, if I go a night without Beam now, I wake up and I realize I'm like shit, I forgot to take Beam last night. Like I just didn't
Yeah.
sleep as well. Like it's crazy
Yeah.
how, I don't want to say it's not addictive, but it's like you love feeling so good after you have your products
Yeah.
that it becomes almost an addiction, like not forget to do it before you go to bed.
Yeah. No, I think that's sort of like our goal with stuff is we want, they're just kind of zigzagging. It's kind of fun, but like at the core, it's like we want people to experience like what it feels like to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
That can come from a better night's sleep. That, our focus capsules, like I feel like the cognitive boost that I get from that, especially in this work from home environment, just being on your computer, always on Slack, emails, etc. Like it's nice to feel sort of my brain feel a little bit more charged up with a lot of the nootropics and adaptogens that's in there. Even just like the Revive capsules, just like inflammation, like the aches and pains you get from working out and stuff, and just like feeling better recovered. So that's, everybody's pursuing stuff and everybody has things, everyone's busy. And I think that's what's been kind of neat with it is like we've created these things that, like we always just say, like help you be more happy, healthy, whole. And like, so you don't have to worry about, you don't really need to worry about sleeping. Just drink your Beam.
Yeah.
Like we'll cover your sleep so you can go focus and wake up and feel refreshed to, keep building the podcast and keep doing the things that you're doing. That's kind of like a way to like simply just break it down is like, let us take care of these health needs that you have. So you don't need to think about them. Just take your Dream at night. You'll be fine. You'll wake up feeling refreshed. You don't need to think about your sleep too much. Like we'll get you covered.
Love it.
It's kind of how we think about our products. Yeah.
No, it makes a ton of sense. And it's cool too, because it seems like, from even this conversation today, you guys have tested a lot of things. You've killed things that don't work. You've tripled down on things that do, and you've continued to innovate. From even like a finance perspective, obviously this is a finance podcast. I know you guys had you've done some fundraising with Beam too, which is exciting. Is that, and I'd love to know just a little more for everyone listening, because I think it's cool to think about you guys' trajectory and where you guys are at and who you're partnered with. I would assume some of that is really built to like take this thing to the moon, right? It's like, is it to invest in more innovation and to get more just better products to market in different categories, or how are you guys thinking about the future of Beam?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think early on, we raised just some friends and family money. I don't know that we had like really a plan in place other than like, we're just trying to grow this thing as fast as we can. Cause at the time there was just so many people coming into space and we need to move quickly. We can't, slow down to try to grow profitably from day one. We had the conversation actually just to say like, do you want to be a speedboat or a sailboat? Like, do you want to just focus on profitability from day one, or do you want to be a speedboat, get out there? We can always then trust that we'll figure out profitability and building a really efficient business. And we took the speedboat approach. And
I'm starting to see a pattern here, Matt. I think you're just a speedboat in general.
It's a gift and a curse, I think. But at some point, maybe I'll transition to more of a sailboat and transition more into a savoring life kind of lifestyle. But until then, but I think one thing I'm really proud about with Kevin and more too, just with our team, we have a great team. I know you know some of them too.
Yeah.
And the thing that we're really proud is like we've done this. You read stories like companies they more focus on rounds of funding and valuations and how much they raised and getting to a Series C, a B, D, whatever. We want to raise capital, but we always want to like be in control of what we're doing. And I think we've done it to a point where probably it's been a little bit more of a challenging strategy to sort of like always maintain and kind of just like continue to have optionality so that we're never like, we have to go do this now to get to the next stage. We've raised money like as we've needed, and I think we've used it really intelligently. We haven't just raised money to go completely pour it into acquisition and just grow the business at all costs, because you can run into some serious trouble when you do that. You just can be burning so much cash monthly that it's hard to unwind it. Really, we have over 20 people. Like we take the responsibility to obviously our customers is number one, but then it's our team. There's health insurance, there's payroll. People are betting their lives, spending their time to work here at Beam. Like we take the fact, like I don't ever want to have a conversation where we have to consider, laying off half the team because we, ran this thing into the ground so fast and furious that we didn't pay attention and ran into some really tough times. And we have to, fiduciary responsibility to all the investors, from friends and family that, wrote small checks just at the beginning to help us get going, to some, big VC firms and big entrepreneurs and investors. So anyways, what I was saying with that is just like, we've taken a really diligent approach on let's build a really big, fast growing business, but let's do it efficiently. And I would say it's really hard to do that. I think you can always go out and just buy customers. But to really find product market fit, understand what your customers want. We've launched a subscription program. So to understand, recurring revenue, those are, really understand it's like the unit economics of the business. Like early on, like we boxed above our weight class. We just grew as fast as we could. We made some really stupid financial bets. We were burning money when we probably weren't totally aware exactly. We weren't thinking about customer acquisition costs. We weren't thinking about margins as much. Like now we have some smart people in the team. We're so dialed into every penny. We're not scared to take bets either. Like we'll fail fast and move on. But we try to really grow a smart business. And I think this day too, like with COVID and who knows what's going on with the economy and all these different things, like I'd rather have a business that, can withstand a lot of that versus something like if capital dries up and we're not able to raise money because the markets have completely shifted. We need capital to stay alive. I don't want to be in that position either these days.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing I'm really proud of. I guess I'll shut up. I've been probably belaboring
this
that,
is
but
fantastic. You're answering the question perfectly.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Feel free to cut me off if I ever need to.
No, this is great.
Yeah.
And no, I think it's really interesting because, I don't know if you guys were making money in the early days, but it sounds like one thing that sounds very different from you guys, from other people I've talked to on here, is a lot of people raise money because they have to raise money. And it sounds like you guys raised money because you wanted to raise money and you wanted to, accelerate the hell out of this business, which is very different, right? To your point.
Yeah.
You can raise money because you just have a cash flow negative business, or you can raise money because you're trying to beat competition out to be first to market, which sounds like what you guys did.
Yeah. I think, I don't think you want to raise money to stay alive. I think you want to raise money to pour gas in the fire. And if you can maintain the business so that that's the strategy on fundraising, not, hey, if we don't do this, we're going to have to shut the doors or lay off half the team. We have some metrics in the team, where we look at like all of our fixed costs, like, we're usually pretty like tight-lipped around just like some of the metrics of the business and things like that.
You don't need to share
but
yeah,
there's just definitely things like we keep really keen on certain things so that we know like we're not overstaffing the team because we have certain metrics and KPIs we put in place that like acts as guiding principles to how many people we should staff and how do we hire into that, while also hiring into what we want to be doing 12 months from now, like how to balance all that out. And we don't want to hire the team now that we'll need in 2 years from now, but we want to start staffing the team that we're going to need next summer, when we're trying to make a strong push for the last half of the year. Or and honestly too, I think we've learned that some of the hard ways. I would say this year in particular, like we've been fortunate to bring in some really smart people and from great wellness brands too. We've hired some from Athletic Greens, Liquid IV, Sakara.
Oh wow.
Some great agencies, and they're really smart at what they do, from partnerships, acquisition, brand, all this stuff. And, Kevin and I were just reflecting, we probably did that a few months too late, like seeing the impact that they're having in the business. Like, gosh, imagine if we brought them in like a quarter sooner. So I think there's a really fine balance of understanding, like, I think, like we love to be out over our skis a little bit and feel that uncomfortableness. But we try to keep everything I think too, Kevin and I's job a lot is to be a contrarian. Team has ideas, strategies, whether it be, especially like early stage companies, I think it's really important to focus more on growth marketing. Obviously we built a brand, so we haven't neglected brand. I think we've more just achieved that through like packaging and the look and feel and aesthetic of the brand versus big brand campaigns and just dumping dollars into more brand awareness. Now, as we're growing in scaling, like we do want to start investing more into brand campaigns. But you better have a really good compelling reason as like what is going to let us know this is successful, and really understand like why is this a good use of the capital versus dumping this into something we know is going to be more transactional and acquiring customers. I think we, within all that and driving efficiency, like you have to really challenge every idea. You can't just, oh, this sounds good and we should just go do that and deploy this capital into that. We try to have a lot of good logic and reason into everything, and always have an hypothesis on what we think will happen. So that way, if the results come back and we can kind of track and measure if it's successful or not. There's been so many fascinating things that just like, in the early days, like I really think like you're just so simplistic. You're looking like, when I put a product on the website, I want someone to buy it, Like, you just think like that. That's how simple we thought, I think, at the time, of like, we just need to get the products up there and just think about like purchases. Now it's just like, if we do something, if we're thinking about the acquisition cost of the customer, thinking the lifetime value of those customers, do we need to make that money back initially on that investment? Or, we track the LTV, the retention, and understand like 3 months from now, that might be a profitable exercise. So we'll take that bet now. We'll take a little bit of a miss in that month, but over the next 2-3 months, we know, because the lifetime value of these customers, the retention of the product that we're promoting, that actually is a great exercise for us with our goals of growing and scaling and doing it efficiently. I think, and that's something we didn't obviously think about early on. I remember one time we were raising money. That's probably one of my favorite stories. We were just raising money from anybody who would write us a check in the early days. Obviously, got connected to this big private equity guy. He had done some amazing things in private equity. Obviously, like, not those 0 to 1 companies, but those 1 to 100 companies, like big deals.
Yeah.
And he was just going to write a personal check. I think it was like $200,000-$300,000, which was like huge at the time. Like, we're collecting like $5,000-$10,000 from like our crazy uncle.
Sure. Yeah.
so and like, begging like our former teammates to put in, a little bit of money. So we're chatting with him. I think we've had a website for like 2.5 months. And, where the business was at that time is like, we were using a spare bedroom in the house that I was living in. That was our fulfillment center, the spare bedroom.
Wow.
And, the photos of it are hilarious. And this guy is asking Kevin and I, he's like kind of putting us through brain surgery. And like, really at that stage, like, people are just taking a flyer on Kevin and I and making a bet if they think that we're going to be successful or not, or if we're going to lose their money. And so, he's asking us to, all these like questions, and then he's asking like about a cohort, like, have you put a cohort analysis? And we're just like, so like, I'm looking envelopes and putting stickers on boxes. Like, we've had a website, we haven't had a website for 3 months. Like, I don't even know what a cohort analysis is. And now like, we have an insane amount of cohort analysis across all different segments of customers and, the business and products and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just fun. Like,
that's
you
funny.
Evolve so much. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
at that time,
well, I mean, yeah, it sounds like, obviously the beginning, it's like, you're just trying to figure shit out too, right? It's like, there's no room to be like, that's something that like a big brand will do, right? Or where you guys are at now, right? That's so funny. How did he respond to something like that? How did like a potential investor?
Yeah, I think he just had a laugh about it. I mean, I think it was so, I think he just had a laugh about it, because I think he's just kind of like, oh, because again, like, he wasn't an operator, like, he hadn't done something or been involved in something so early stage. Like, he's so used to these private equity deals, and we're just like, we weren't thinking about cohort analyses. We're trying to figure out how to get enough money to pay for an XPO and like keep doing this thing. We, had just
100%.
launched the website.
Yeah, I know. I went from Walmart.com, so working at, the biggest company on the planet, to RX Bar. And I remember like coming to that office and like seeing people working on mountains of LaCroix. I was like, oh, this is 100%. I gotta be a part of this. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I totally get that. If you've never been a part of like a small operating startup, it's a whole different thing.
It's insane.
Totally different world. Well, really cool. I mean, the story of going to 0 to 1 for you guys, I mean, to me, I feel like you're going to be one of the 1 to 100s. I'm very bullish on what you're doing. So I'm excited to keep seeing what you guys do. Couple of the last questions I want to ask quickly, because I know we're running out of time. I love to ask every founder that comes on here, because I think you guys always have really cool responses to this. The first one is just, obviously, as you've said, there's a million moving pieces. You're managing now 20 plus people. You're running a company. What do you use day in and day out to, keep track and plan your goals? And then honestly, like, just daily tasks to get shit done. What does Matt Lombardi use to do that? Whether it's a pen and paper, an app, what are your tools?
I think my first tool is just like my morning routine. Just to get up, I have a big thing of water, I have some coffee, and then before the day gets crazy, I love just to read, journal, meditate. And then after that, I'm a pen and paper kind of guy. And for me, I forget where, when it comes, then when I start to get like my beam hat on, get kind of dialed into the day. So I'm just always taught me the acronym WIN, what's important now. And so that's kind of where I just write out WIN, and then just like, what are the main things, just to kind of stay focused, like what or who right now needs like my most attention and focus. And there's just so many different things going on at once. Like, it definitely helps just to have keep a priority list. So I guess just, it's really simple. I never really overthought of it as the key thing, but that question, that's what comes up, is just try to stay focused each day. Like, what's the most important thing or things today that we should focus on, if anything?
Love it. Yeah. Keep it simple. Love that.
Yeah.
I think it always works better.
Hmm.
The next one is just source of knowledge. So for the listeners, do you have any books, podcasts, just anything source of knowledge that you would I guess, pass on to the audience today?
Yeah. I'm a huge Ray Dalio fan, so I always would recommend any podcast he's been on, or he has a book called Principles, and he's a very successful hedge fund manager, and he essentially just boiled down his best work and life principles into, it's almost just like a textbook, and you can kind of poke through it and just read and find stuff that resonated at the time. But there's so many good nuggets in there just about communication and teamwork and, transparency and dealing with reality and making decisions. It's almost like, I would say, like almost like a Bible to, just daily living, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. There's so many good things in there. And then I just generally speaking, I always just find like I just have a thirst for knowledge. Like there's an endless supply of knowledge out there, from podcasts to books to interviews, YouTube videos. It's just important to be really curious and like constantly be learning stuff. Like whatever you're doing, there's smarter people. There's people who've done what you're wanting to do in some form or another. Just keep learning, because it's like that's where I always find like my best ideas come from. Is just, I always just say to the team too, like success leaves clues. Just
Oh, I
go
love
read
that.
and learn as much as you can about other things or people that you admire, things that you're trying to do. Like there's people typically want to share what they've learned or have, through podcast, books, or maybe you can connect with them one-on-one. But I just say like Principles is my favorite book, but then I would just say like, have a constant curiosity for stuff.
Love it. No, that's fantastic. And then the last question, and the most important, is how can people follow along with you, whether that's Instagram, socials? I can share all that. And then how can they get involved with Beam?
Yeah. So personally, just Matt Lombardi 24 on Instagram. And then Beam is just at Beam, BEAM on Instagram, and then beamorganics.com is the website. And yeah, yeah.
Love it. I'll add all the links to that, so that'll be easy to
Perfect.
find. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Matt. It was really
Yeah.
cool to
Thanks,
learn the
Shane.
0 to 1. Obviously, I've known you for a little bit, so it was cool to hear all
Yeah.
this stuff. And I, love what you guys are doing, love what you guys are building, and I'm sure people will check out Beam, hopefully for the first time from listening to this. So thanks
Yeah.
for taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, 100%.